Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We are kicking it off for Jackrabbit Illustrated for our preseason podcast that we're going to be doing. Dallas went and put together a whole lineup. You can see that on our Twitter page and Facebook page. As always, we are broadcasting on the Jackrabbit Illustrated Facebook page, the Jackrabbit Illustrated YouTube, as well as the FCS Fans Nation YouTube. I would like to shout out Blazer Bobcat for having the second comment of the day. That's pretty exciting. Good for you, buddy. Way to jump in after some other guy.
Clowny.
I'm just teasing you around, probably. Anyways, thanks everybody for joining us.
Did we meet Ron last in the semifinal?
No, we did not. I would have remembered that. I know I would have remembered that. Hopefully, we see at least 6 or 7 of the Bobcat fans at the start of the season. That'd be fun to have you guys come hang out. Really excited for that game as always. But before we jump into that, we're gonna do our regular tomfoolery. How you guys been? Chad, you're building the shop. Ben, you're living life, golfing your brains out and tossing softly toss balls and all that stuff. You know, how's everybody doing?
Good, can't complain, man. Summer's been going fast. Before you know it, we'll have Jackrabbit football here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've been working my tail off, and still not there. The last 10% takes 90% of the time, it seems.
Yeah, and you know what? I've been such a good friend and not shown up to help once, but I thought
Don't worry, there's concrete to be poured.
All right, cool.
Will be
concrete work. That's worse. I'm busy that day.
Days.
It's gonna be busy all those days. It's terrible. I'm so busy. It's insane.
Ben said he was willing to help too. So
yeah, that's what I hear. He won't stop talking about how much he wants to help build Chad's shop at softball. I'm like, dude, we're trying to do stuff here.
Lean towards more the supervisory role.
Oh,
so
you don't say?
I could come oversee things, make sure everything's going as smooth as possible.
I would be remiss if I did not point out our title sponsor, Kubota Dealers of South Dakota, of which we have many of them. If you are looking for a high quality implement or tractor to take care of your acreage, farm, or even your yard, if you got a big one, check out Kubota, South Dakota Dealers of Jenner Equipment, Eastside Equipment in Watertown, Jenner Equipment's in Rapid City, Floyd's Kubota, Fort Pierre, Farmers Implement and Irrigation in Brookings, Pfeiffer's in Sioux Falls. I might have said that wrong because I'm a bad person. And then Butte County Equipment Automotive Company and Lindskov Equipment Implement from Belfouche, South Dakota, Isabel and Mobridge, because they like to give. I'm not going to finish that.
I think it's pronounced Bella Forche.
Bella Forche. Yes, if you're fancy like that, and people might notice if we're being fancy tonight. I'm not having my normal chocolate milk. We're rocking some ears up tonight, and the Bush Peach, which if nobody's tried. Oh, that is good. That's because you don't like peaches, Chad.
100%.
Just makes you a strange person, but they are fantastic. You're one of 2 people I know that don't like it, which is just silly. Absolutely ridiculous. Anyways, I would like to thank everybody for joining us. Obviously, per the schedule, and not the football schedule, but the one that we're having for our preseason podcast, we are talking about the aforementioned entitled FBS potential and moves and things like that. But that's not really what we're talking about. I do want to be very clear. We are not pushing for an FBS move. This kind of all got kicked to hornet's nest when I brought up
shirtless in that picture?
I was laughing at Brian's comment. That was funny. Good dude. Met him in Frisco. But anyways, I put out a couple articles about what a potential FBS move looks like, what may or may not happen in that, yada yada yada. And the immediate reaction that we got from that was, "Oh my God, well, I don't want to go to FBS. I don't want to go to FBS." And look, that was actually opposite of what I was trying to put that out for, because I would hear not a ton, but somewhat regularly from some fans, a bunch of things that they would say, like about how much money you make in FBS and things like that. Things that are a little bit overblown. And I wanted to get the facts out there and the general consent, the real numbers out there, and what that looks like. You don't just jump FBS and all of a sudden gold rains from the skies and, ESPN is putting you on, the main ESPN every Saturday at noon as their focal point game. That's not how that works. So the point was just to get that out there, to get that sort of info in front of people, because as we've seen up north, like, Brian, big proponents up north in NDSU of moving to FBS, which I completely understand. I don't knock it. I get it. There's plenty of reasons to and not to move. And I do feel that eventually that might become a topic down here. So I just wanted to get that information out, which was kind of my whole idea behind that.
To be fair, a little bit of gold does rain from the sky, but you need a lot of gold to pay for everything else that comes with FBS.
Right.
And it's
right.
It takes money to make money.
And like people like to point out like the college football payouts. Everybody points out, well, you get so much money from the college football playoff. If you look up what that actually amounts to, yes, it is millions of dollars to the conferences. But once you divide that amongst 10, 12, however many teams, it ends up being around, I think, $600,000 a year. And when we looked at that, when you look at what you need to have an FBS budget, $600,000 is a pittance towards the money that you need. But so why even bring it up? Why bring it up particularly now, right? And I think the general issue is, we all saw, right, what happened with the last round of realignment, and I really enjoy following that stuff, which is why I brought it up. I don't know if you guys have any other reasons besides that for jabbering about it at all.
I mean, I think in general it's interesting, especially with the massive moves that are happening at the FBS level. Like, what do those mean, and does it open up spots? And just that's what's fun to talk about for me in terms of on the SDSU side of things, is what do those huge moves mean for us?
Yeah,
go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, and I think there's a contingent of fans of the FCS teams that are starting to believe in the FCS has become watered down. There's not all the same players that were there just 5 years ago. Greener pastures that way. I don't know. I'm still happy with the format for the playoffs, that's for sure. And I'd hate to lose that, just so that we can go up a level and play in a nobody's watching bowl.
Right. And, realistically, as much as we make fun of bowl games, a lot of people watch on TVs, but their background at a bar, a lot comparatively to the national title game. Part of it, it's similar. They're competitive with each other. Right. And I get that. I'm not a fan of having to go to a bowl game. I really have a hard time seeing myself being excited to go to the Detroit Motor City Bowl or whatever and having to go to Detroit in the middle of December. Like, that's no, I'm good. Hi, Dallas. I miss you too, buddy.
Which
flex,
friend?
Huh?
That's which friend?
That's not very
just
specific.
one friend.
Now we're all jealous of just one of us. Who is the friend? I'm gonna count it for myself, so I sleep better at night, and that's the way that's going. What's up, Josh? Thanks for listening. But some of the arguments about it as well for moving up, I disagree with to an extent. That the FCS is watered down. Are there as many teams that were considered powerhouses 15 years ago? Absolutely not. That's correct. You've got your Montanas. You could say Delaware. You could say Youngstown State. Obviously, the Dakota States have become it. Eastern Washington is an outlier, fringe team. Especially, I mean, they lose points because Kyler Neal's a fan of them. So he's just a bad guy. No, I'm kidding, Kyler. But you lost a lot of teams, Georgia Southern, App State, and people like to point at those. And it's like, it's nothing without those teams. Well,
what about Kennesaw State? We're going to lose them. They're totally
right. I know. And people lost their minds about Jacksonville State leaving. And it's like, okay. I mean, look, I'm not trying to shit on Jacksonville State here, but they made a national title game, and after that, they proceeded to get their insides pulled out of their rectums every time they played a real team in the playoffs for a while. And like Ron Lowney says, it is more fun to be in the FCS right now, personal opinion, but some really good teams have left. Both things can be true, but look at what Incarnate Word did last year. If you'd asked 15 years ago, I remember specifically 15 years ago, bouncing around on message boards and NDSU fans coming in with their chests all puffed out and everybody just running them down because you're a D2 team. It's not impossible to think that some of the D2s that move up become really good teams. So that is where I push back a little bit when it comes to that. And the one that really kind of drives me a little bit crazy is, you won't lose as many players to the transfer portal.
Yeah.
And when I push back on that, I get, SCSU just hasn't been hit yet. Look, I promise you, I know. My favorite saying when it comes to the transfer portal is the transfer portal comes for us all. The SDSU will get hammered one day by it, and it will happen and happen and happen. But pretending that it only happens to a massive degree at the FCS level, like G5 teams aren't farm programs for the Power 5 as well, is just silly. Like, just because you're FBS doesn't mean all of a sudden you've got a huge NIL collective that's going to throw money at players to keep them around. You're still going to get pillaged, and to a higher extent, really, because in a lot of coaches' minds, the FBS is a much better player because you're playing much better talent. Never mind the fact that CUSA is basically would be the fourth best FCS conference. That might be a bit harsh, but you're still going to have that happen. You're still going to lose a bunch of transfers. And realistically, if you follow Sam Herder at all, there's almost been 200. Yeah, I think it's almost 200 more FBS transfers have come to the FCS than FCS transfers have gone to the FBS. So that is something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and Ron just mentioned they can't keep a coach to keep moving up. That's going to happen at the next level too. I mean, there's probably more stability at the FCS in coaching than there is in the G5.
Right. Because once they're G5, they then you're even more visible.
You're on the radar.
The Power 5 programs. That's kind of the general way things work is FCS, G5, FBS. That's the way it goes. And Brian says, G5 and top 5 FCS teams are 100% farm teams. You can't fault the players, take the money, one play away from never playing again. Yes and no. I don't disagree with that. There's absolutely what happens with it now. And I wonder, because we're still kind of in the early stages of all this, it has to settle out at some point. At some point, the players that are all jumping in the portal have to realize that and we'll get into that, Dustin. Also, you're already ahead of the CUSA now. Don't jump to CUSA if offered. We'll get into that in a second here once we get off the transfer portal, which was not the intent of this one. But it is a factor, right? So
you know how
you
we
are
always follow
going
our
to lose
outlines.
teams and you will lose top players. I would argue, however, that FCS football gets affected much less than mid-major basketball does, because there's already more players in the portal than spots that are available by 50%. They've already got the stats like 50% of these guys that are jumping in the portal never get on a team. And at some point, these guys are going to figure out that's the way it's going. And you can't just jump and say you're going to a team because you're upset and then you can't play at all. But in the end, sometimes you get a guy like Tucker Kraft, which is awesome. If you have a good culture, you can minimize it to an extent, but it's still going to happen. It is what it is. It's going to happen G5 or not. That's just my 2 cents on it. And what are you going to spend more money to have your players go to FBS, go to Power 5 teams instead, especially in an area surrounded by more Power 5 teams, Nebraska, Iowa State, Minnesota, Missouri to an extent?
Yeah, and I think, the FCS transfers going up, I think there's been enough examples now where, there's a few, maybe a handful that have been real successful that have gone on to start for, a P5 team. But I think there's some realization that you can transfer up, but you're not guaranteed to play. And sometimes, you talk about exposure. If you want exposure and you're buried on a P5 roster and you aren't getting on the field very much, how much exposure is that compared to starring for an FCS team that is a top 5 FCS team that's making the championship? And I mean, you're getting way more exposure that way than you will be buried on a P5 team. And I think a lot of players are starting to realize the value in that. And that's why I think you're seeing some stick around instead of go up.
Yeah. I mean, unless you're on Alabama, if you're second string, you're not getting into the draft. It's really hard. It's a lot easier to be a star somewhere like SDSU or NDSU for that matter, or anything like that. But excuse me, I just having a day here. Preseason. We're in preseason form, boys. I hope everybody hangs in there with us. But why do we bring this up in the first place? Well, if anybody's been paying attention, the Pac-12, the Big 10, the Big 12, SEC, not so much as far as SDSU fans are concerned and their moves. Those cause the seismic waves that have already been felt for all these Southern teams. But why is the Pac-12 and the Big 10 and the Big 12, why does that matter so much to SDSU? And why could that trickle down? Why does it make sense now? Or why is that? I don't know about makes sense, but why is that something that we pay attention to? Well, number one, it has to do with the Mountain West, because as it sits right now, the Pac-12, everything right now is resting on one thing. It's resting on the Pac-12's media deal. Everybody's waiting for that to go into effect before any moves are made. That's why San Diego State was like, oh, we're not going to leave, but we're leaving. But also we're not going to leave. Wait, no, we're not leaving, because the deal never got done. They're not going to get a formal invitation until that media deal gets done. And that's been the word everywhere. Now, what makes it interesting is there's rumors that Oregon and Cal and Stanford might all end up in the Big 10, and the Arizona schools end up going to the Big 12. And I think, and you're leaving, Oregon and Washington to the Big 10, and then possibly Cal and Stanford to the Big 10. And then the Arizona schools go to the Big 12, and now you've got like Oregon State and a couple teams left. Now, why does that affect SDSU? Well, it's possible that, Ron Lowney says, welcome to the Big Sky, Oregon State and Washington State. The reality is they probably could go either to just straight into the Mountain West, because there's no way the Mountain West says no and the Pac-12 folds. I have a hard time seeing that. I don't know if anybody follows Matt Brown on Twitter. I follow him because he's got a lot of he's got tons of insider info with how these conference shifts and things happen. And he's said multiple times, it's really hard to kill a conference. I mean, we thought like the Big South was going to die a while ago, and a couple other FCS conferences, the Southland, like, oh, they're going to die because everybody left for the WAC, and they're still hanging in there. So I have a really hard time seeing what's been considered for decades one of the power conferences in the country to just disappear. I have a hard time seeing that. I could see most of the Mountain West schools and the Pac getting together, your powerful and wealthy Mountain West schools getting together with other schools and markets they want to be in and all jumping to the Pac-12 just to have the name alone. And then now your Mountain West is decimated. Why is this important to your Dakota States? The Mountain West never pulls really from the FCS. It's pretty rare. But if you read the article I put together, and we'll go over it in a little while, the Mountain West is your conference that makes the most sense from SDSU. And if they lose a ton of teams, that's where the possibility lies.
100%. I mean, you look at it, you talk about geography all the time and how important that is. It depends on what teams are left in the Mountain West, but likely it's that, upper Northwest area. And likely they're going to start to pick off some big sky teams. And then the next thing they would look at is to probably NDSU, SDSU. That'd be the next logical step.
Yeah. And, realistically, even before that, because just from the prestige standpoint, not that they're better programs, not that they have better attendance, anything like that, they probably look first to Texas, just because Texas market is all, and they can grab a UTEP that's not going outside of their time zones and grab those schools first. So if you only have like San Diego State leave the Mountain West, this is not happening. If you're Dakota State, it's not happening. It's just there's too many dominoes in the way that are media market wise, size wise, everything else that are going to be more attractive for a Mountain West than a South Dakota or North Dakota State for that matter. Because if you look at, you pull up just the distances, you're adding, say you added Dakota State to the Mountain West over a UTEP. Just from a travel standpoint, you're adding an entire new time zone, and that team is going to have to cover it's up 3 time zones for all the schools that are not named Hawaii during a regular conference schedule. That plays hell with a team. We've seen that with UND when they did that in the Big Sky. That's a huge deal. Never mind everything else. So that's already something that's not in your favor. Never mind, you're not bringing TV dollars. You're just not.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think the interesting thing for me is if the Mountain West gets gutted by the Pac-12, then what does the money look like in the Mountain West now? Because the money is going to follow these big teams. I mean, there's going to be money pouring into the SEC, pouring into the Big Ten, pouring into, if ACC, obviously, and the Big 12 and the Pac-12 still, as long as the Pac-12 survives. And you start to question, okay, it's the Mountain West, but if it's a Mountain West that's significantly gutted and changed and is now maybe the half or majority previous FCS teams, how much money is there? You know what I mean? Like, that's the question that we don't really know.
Well, they do have a current deal. That's what would be the saving grace for that. They have a current deal. Now, what would it be when that deal expires? I think the hope would be that you can build a Sun Belt level of competition for a Western Conference in that scenario to improve the value of the TV contract. And that's what you'd be hoping for. Because kind of what you're asking right now is why would you want to jump to such a depleted Mountain West Conference, which I don't disagree with at all. But that would be the counterpoint, I think, is you would want to that would be the hopes of it.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Well, and I think,
go ahead.
I think that the problem is there really needs to be a more massive change, I think, in the landscape of FBS football, because the disparity from the top to the bottom has been getting big, and it's about to get even bigger if something like this would happen. And so the requirements that you're placing on most FBS teams should not be the requirements you're going to be placing on the lower FBS teams because of that huge disparity. And so, I mean, it kind of speaks to another point of like, yeah, there's these big changes now, but in my opinion, this is only the beginning. This is the conference realignment and kind of the consolidation of these power teams. But I think that something bigger is going to happen in terms of whether that's, the Power 5 or 4, whatever conferences that is, going on their own and doing something outside of the NCAA. I've heard talk of like, the college football playoff deal it's completely separate from the NCAA. And could they just say, hey, we want these top 4 conferences and we want these teams. This is our football conference, whatever you want to call it, league, whatever you want to call it. I think something like that, in my opinion, is going to happen at some point. And I think that will be a bigger, I don't know, it will be so significant that talking about a potential gutted Mountain West conference is almost pointless at this point, because I think things will change so much before something like that would happen.
Yeah. And how sexy is the Mountain West other than being a G5 team conference? Because, I look at the teams, like who's excited to play Nevada, Fresno State, UNLV.
You're lying to yourself. You're lying to yourself.
I'm not.
Stop it. Stop it.
I'm not lying to myself. Those teams don't excite me at all.
Nevada coming
Boise
to Brookings.
State, sure.
Nevada coming to Brookings would not be more exciting than Youngstown State. Come on, man.
I mean, it might be in the future, but at the current time,
Colorado State coming to Brookings. You were excited enough to go
Colorado
to Fort
State.
Collins.
Yes. No, Colorado State.
Colorado State sucks as a football team.
I know, but still,
how are you more excited about that than having Nevada?
Because I actually know about them.
That's silly.
I mean, I'm not getting excited about the Lobos coming to town.
Yeah, I mean, New Mexico, sure, but you get
Boise
Wyoming,
State, absolutely, that'd be right.
Boise State, you get Colorado.
That would be awesome.
You get Air Force.
Air Force would be cool. But
yeah,
they're not really.
The majority of them would be that'd be a big deal. It would be a big deal. To pretend it wouldn't be a big deal is being purposely obtuse to a point. And don't get me wrong, I get it. It's not like you're bringing in Nebraska to South Dakota State. In theory, there would be an outside chance that someday maybe that could happen. But to your point, Ben, because everybody's got the dream of the Power 5 breaks off. They take their own ball and go home. That's been rumored for 20 plus years, and it hasn't happened.
Yeah,
it's
but
been on message board fodder forever. And here's the reason that it won't so far. The NCAA tournament, the big dance. It's not what it is without the Cinderellas. And if they break off for the football, they're going to break off for everything else. And you kill the golden goose.
I think because they got what they wanted with the playoffs. That I don't think
look how much money
break off's going to happen now. And the conferences are so large, right? I mean,
it's all about money.
What do they want?
It's all about money in the end, right? So now that they've expanded the 12, I think they projected they were going to triple or quadruple what the value of the playoff was just by adding in 2 G5 programs and not having to completely flip the apple cart. That's possible. It is possible that eventually the Power 5 breaks off. And I do think it's sort of inedible, but it's going to take a long time, longer than people think. But that kind of ties into why would SDSU even entertain, people ask this when the Montana former Montana AD and Big Sky Commissioner just dropped that. I know NDSU and SDSU have been campaigning with the Mountain West to get in. Well, why would they even do that? Why would they do that right now? Well, if you read the article that I put together, we put out in segments. If you look at it, there's only one conference right now that financially and geographically sort of would make enough sense for SDSU to jump, and that is the Mountain West Conference. There's not enough TV money in the MAC, especially when you include having to play your Tuesday games. Conference USA sucks balls. Their media deal is a quarter of what SDSU brings in for media deals right now. The Sun Belt is not bringing us in for geography reasons. Your best shot is the Mountain West, and it's good, and it's going to be your best shot for a while, is what it looks like. Because once the dust settles on this, they're putting in all sorts of restrictions for. If you listen to Patty Viverito on, I think with Dom Izzo on like the 30th of June, she talks about one of the things they're implementing into FBS is you have to fund 90% of your scholarships at FBS level, which sounds ridiculous, but that's a huge amount of money for some schools. They've jumped your money that you have to pay to jump to FBS from $5,000, which was ridiculous, $5,000, to $5 or $10 million plus. After you factor in all your budget jumps and everything, it makes it $11 or $12 million to jump to FBS. And they're slowly making it a more difficult thing to do. So if you have a chance to do it in a quality conference, you might want to shoot your shot.
100%. I mean, I think you just kind of gave the too long, didn't read version of your 4 articles, is that the Mountain West is their best shot.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know I had my
business.
Anyway, I think
is my power going to go out, Ben? Is that what that call is about?
No, you're good still, I think. Anyway, I think the point is that the most ideal scenario that we could see right now would be that the Pac-12 sucks, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 teams away from Mountain West. And then the Mountain West is looking to try to make itself stronger by adding 2, 3, 4 FCS teams, maybe 5. And I think you're looking at Montana State, NDSU, SDSU, maybe Idaho. Those would be the 5, I think, that are potential. And I think, I guess in my opinion, I think that would be the most ideal situation for us right now. And to have it be for the most part, the Mountain West as it exists, and being a part of that current TV deal. Would you agree that that's ideal?
Well, I think we're going to move. A lot of what I've heard is Sac State has gobs of money if they wanted.
Yeah, Sac State too. Yeah,
gigantic amount of money, and they would add a huge TV market.
Right.
So that would be, and Idaho's kind of going to have a hard time because they moved back to FCS. It's really tarnished their image. It makes it really difficult. So I could see Sac State over them, just money wise. But if you think about it,
sorry, Chris.
UC Davis.
Yeah, I mean they got a ton of money.
They got a ton of money too. It's a possibility. I wouldn't say it's impossible.
They would bring that California element as well.
But say they lose 5 or 6 teams, they probably invite like a UTEP no matter what, and then both Montana schools. Say they do UTEP, both Montana schools, both SDSU schools, and a Sac State, for argument's sake. They get hammered that bad. Would probably be what it would take.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that I wouldn't be disappointed in that conference. That'd be exciting. If you got, say, you got Air Force, both the Montanas. I mean, the Montanas would get everybody around here fired up. Wyoming would be a lot of fun to play against. Colorado State's probably gone for money, things like that. UTEP would be meh, but it's not the worst. Is what I'm saying. I'm kind of ambivalent on the whole thing, if it works or not. The thing I do want to point out is there was a lot of people going, well, this Montana AD, he hasn't been in the game for 10 years, and he doesn't know what's going on at SDSU or NDSU. You're right. You're absolutely right. I have no doubt that he has no idea or no inside information on at SDSU or NDSU. But being a former AD and a former conference commissioner out west, I'm 100% sure that he knows somebody
Also,
West.
also, he's just generally not stupid. Like,
Right.
if we're smart enough to figure out that SDSU should consider and maybe talking to the Mountain West, like he's
Right.
probably also figured it out.
Well, and here's my thing. And then, Mike McFeely comes out and he's got to do his due diligence. And he says, well, I talked to the presidents at SDSU and NDSU, and they said no way. Of course they said no way. You know how stupid, like, God bless them. But these NDSU fans that are so mad that NDSU is not publicly pushing to be FBS, that's the dumbest thing you can do. Just look at the mess San Diego State has created just by looking to change conferences. You slit your own throat when it comes to negotiations. And by the way, there's a ton of important things happening in the Summit League right now because you just lost a member. You need to add a member or two. So you want your voice to have a lot of weight in case things don't work out. You've got media deals happening where it's possible that, say Flow Sports comes in with a better deal, but ESPN for money, but you want to stay with ESPN because as a school, the Dakota schools are smart enough to know that Flow Sports blows donkey dick.
That's
so
putting it lightly.
They decide to go with they want to be ESPN, but UMKC and Denver and UNO and the rest of the sewage of the conference are like, money. You want your word to matter more because as it sits right now, the Dakota states are the powers of the conference. You flush it all away by going, oh, yeah, absolutely. We've been having back channel negotiations with the Mountain West. We've been trying to get in there for like 2 years. This place sucks. It's just stupid. It's just common sense. Of course, they're not going to say yes, they are, even if they were. And I'm not saying they were. I'm just saying, good Lord.
Right. Before we move on, one point, you mentioned the market that like a Sacramento State would have. And if you're an SDSU fan and you would like to see SDSU move up to the FBS, the biggest thing you can do is, if you're an SDSU fan that's listening to this, you're probably a big enough fan already that you're watching every game and attending every game and all things like that. But the biggest thing you can do is try to grow our fan base, because the bigger that our attendance numbers get, the bigger that our TV numbers get, the more attractive that we are to an FBS conference. And so, from a fan standpoint, like if you're interested in moving to FBS and if you're looking to make a difference, that is something you can definitely do, and that would definitely potentially move the meter.
Or even not moving. We're in our media contract right now for a local media deals coming up. You want that to be worth more money? Show up, turn the game on, the whole works. Subscribe to Midco for the $6 a month during the Jack season, that sort of stuff. It pays dividends down the road because even if you want to be FCS, you want to be you always want to be as well funded as possible. So media deals are a huge deal. That's why the money and everything. So anyway, anything helps no matter which way you want to go. If you want to stay FCS, it doesn't mean don't show up or like, I'm just going to show up and not tell anybody. I don't think anybody would do that, but
I agree, Ariel.
It matters either way.
Bring friends. But Ariel, by the way, you said 7 weeks till the first game. It's definitely shorter than that. So
100%.
Just want to make sure you don't miss the first game.
She'll be there. She won't have a choice.
I know she'll be.
We were already talking about taking off Thursday, and we'll be tailgating at like 2 p.m. So I don't know about you guys, but
put that in my calendar.
She's like, well, I might need to take Friday off too. I'm like, you know what? We might have to take Friday off.
Hey, John.
There is one advantage when it comes to attendance for if hypothetically, since we're on the FBS conference and talk and everything, there's one advantage for attendance wise for going FBS. That would be your attendance looks better because there's no games after November, no home games. It's just you're done, and then it's a bowl game, which sucks as a fan, but also The attendance would look great. You know when every game is. You're not worried about the weather nearly as much. That sort of thing. So I do want to address. Dustin said up a little while ago that SDSU and NDSU can afford to move up, but I don't think it's the Mountain West Conference. I do hate that it would be Conference USA because that's a step down. Then it won't happen. It won't happen.
Nope.
Unless Conference USA does something ridiculous, like give the Dakota States and a football. Oh, there's the drink. We saw the drink delivery, ladies and gentlemen. Sam has entered the chat, and she's gone. That was smooth. That was.
I could
slick.
hear her
I thought
putting
you
the
were slick.
ice in the glass out in the kitchen, so
Nice.
I knew it was on its way.
Just the slick backhanded. He's just gets it and brings it in. That's what we're here for, folks. This is what the BBC podcast is all about.
Cheers to that.
B team.
Have we ever actually called it that on air?
Not till now.
We mumbled it. It's what? If somebody's a pervert, that's not my fault. I'm likening it to the British Broadcasting Company.
Right.
With being nasty. It's not my fault.
For those that aren't frequent listeners,
what if this is podcast form?
It's because it's Brendan, Ben, and Chad. Just wanted to throw that out there to make sure
you can actually
you're aware
follow
of our
the
names.
Squares.
Well,
yeah.
Do you guys see what's trending on Twitter? Because Elon wants to change the name to X.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he's talking about videos.
We could have BBC podcast on X.
On X. Yep. X video. No less.
Anyways,
Matt's gonna be real happy about this.
Oh yeah, he's gonna love this. He's asleep now. He's old, right?
I know he is.
But what we were talking about, we can go back to Chad's search history about Conference USA. It's not going to happen. That two things would have to happen that would be really surprising. We got another angry reaction again. Yeah. The lure of bowl money payout is not enough. It's not. The bowl money payout is not enough. I actually go over that, I think, a little bit in the article. The bowl money payout's not that much. What, $2-3 million? That does not make up the gap of having to have a $40 million budget from a $20 million budget. Even if you had bowl money payout, pathetic Conference USA, you'd lose money going to Conference USA on a media deal by $1.5 million. The bowl money payout sort of makes up for that, because don't forget, the bowl money payout happens, but you also have to buy an X amount of tickets for the game and eat the costs if they go unsold. Bowl money payout is a myth. But however, hitherto and therefore, Conference USA would have to do two things if they wanted the Dakota States to join. Number one, they would have to pay them the money from the TV contract and then not broadcast their games and let the games stay on local networks, which won't happen, because then the Dakota States could keep their local contracts that are worth gobs more than the dumpster fire of a deal that Conference USA has. And number two, they would have to be a football-only invite even to make it worth it.
Right.
And that might happen because Conference USA is such a dog shit conference that it might be that desperate. Odds are low. There's no way SDSU and NDSU are that desperate to move up there. No, we will. Dustin says your fans will travel to who gives a rat's ass bowl in Pigs Testicle, Arkansas, though. No, not maybe once or twice.
Is that right next to Texarkana, Dustin? I'm not real hot on my Texas, Arkansas geography.
I hear it's in the area of Dustin's house. He's in Texas, but close to Louisiana, which makes it close-ish to Arkansas, right?
Who broadcasts Conference USA games anyways? Is CBS?
Nobody.
Nobody?
No. Here, I'll pull it up. I have it.
CSA,
all October games are midweek, so that's a non-starter for the Dakota States. I'm 100% sure of that. CBS, Sportsnet, and then ESPN2, ESPN2, and U. It's a hybrid thing. And so your midweek games are on ESPN and ESPN2 and ESPNU, and then Olympic Sports on ESPN Plus. It is $750,000 per school year, which just SDSU's media rights. If you go on that CBS article that Sam Herder had tweeted out a while ago about budgets of schools, SDSU has it listed as bringing in $4 million per year for media rights and licensing. Now that would, I assume, combine, gear sales. And speaking of gear sales, we are repartnered with Jackrabbits Central in Brookings, the bookstore. Get down, take advantage of their deals, order online, the whole works. I believe this weekend and this weekend only, they're updating their payment system online. So the website is down until Monday. Afterwards, though, jump online, jackrabbitcentral.com, order the best SDSU gear you can find around. We're very excited to be repartnered with them. But then you can make that $4 million even bigger, which
Nice
is necessary,
read,
folks. Huh?
Nice read.
Yeah. Read. Yeah, because we write these out. I'm reading them. Nice make it up. Yeah, I did it. But now I forgot. Ben, say words.
Say words.
I forgot where I was.
You were talking about the Conference USA TV deal and
the TV deals.
Yeah. So you're bringing in $4 million between licensing and your TV deal. You've got your TV rights coming up for renegotiation here very soon, right at a time that Forum Communications has just moved into town, bought a TV station, and is going to be in competition with Midco, who, no matter what, Midco's not going to want to lose South Dakota State games. You should be able to get great terms and big money from that, no matter which one you're on. That would be great.
Speaking of midweek games, that's one worry that I would have is that, let's say that ideal situation comes up and we get in the Mountain West, and then I don't know how long that TV contract is for Mountain West. Do you?
Not off the top of my head, but don't let me fool you. I'll get there.
So anyway, once that's up, does ESPN or whoever look at it and say, you know what, that's more of like a midweek game. Like, we could give you more money if you'd go midweek and fill out our schedule. And would it be too much money to turn down? And then do we end up with midweek football?
I think it's probably more like the national championship where they say, this is your time slot. That's what you get. We want you on ES, or
that's what I mean.
Like,
and so it goes through
because we got the contract. So that's what we're doing.
2025, 2026 is what it goes through. So it's got 23, 24, 24, 25, 25. So you've got 3 years, right?
Yeah. Including
left on that deal, including this year.
So we're probably not. In an ideal situation, even in an ideal situation, we're not there until the last year of the TV deal.
Well, yeah, and I think that a lot of that would be up to the teams, and the teams you're in there with. Are you with like-minded institutions who say absolutely not?
But
because that was part of the contract. Like, right. Well, look at Conference USA, for instance, right? $750,000 for school. Let's say, hypothetically, SDSU, NDSU, the Montana schools, who also have their own local TV contracts, are part of a conference. That's almost half of a football conference. Do you think they're going to say, sure, we'll take $750,000 in midweek games for all of October? They would take less money or no TV contract over that.
Yeah, that is true.
100%.
Especially schools like the Montana schools and the Dakota States that rely heavily on donor money and the money of people coming through the gate.
Right. Ticket sales are going to be worse in a midweek game.
Because that is something that was brought up listening to the Knock out in or Nunez out in He's the Big Sky guy. Ron Lowney knows what's up, knows who he is, I'm sure, and all the Bobcat fans. But he covers Montana and Montana State, and he brought up, when you look at these schools that are G5 schools, they are carried by school support, not it's all student fees and school money that float these athletic department budgets. And that's not the model that the Dakotas and Montana schools are built on. They are built on as little money coming as possible from your school to fund your athletic budget, and then then your money coming from donors, sponsorships, endorsements, and people coming through the gate. So having Tuesday night games is going to kill your budget because you're going to kill your attendance, and that's it. There's not enough money in that sort of contract to make up for that loss.
True. Brings up another point that I don't know how much has been talked about, but if that Mountain West scenario happens, do we see, would there be an expansion of the Dana or not?
Didn't they change the requirements on attendance?
They dropped the attendance
requirement.
So it wouldn't matter. However, in theory, I would be hesitant to answer that question before the end of this year, to be honest. What does the attendance look like at the end of this year? Is it filled to the cup? Really to the top, the cusp, not the cup. Is it filled to the brim? Or do we still have room? I mean, it's not a necessary cost if there's not an attendance decree.
Right. That is very true. But if there would be, is it true that it would be a second level on the east side? I think
that would be the logical.
Yeah, I don't be the logical thing. That'd be the easiest way, right?
Yeah.
That and fill in the open corner where the entrance is. I think would be the other logical thing to do there.
Yeah, but you're not gaining a lot by bridging that, though. I don't think.
Depends where you're doing it. If you're doing a second tier height with the second deck, that's on the
no. I just meant that one corner we're talking about. That you don't gain that many seats. I don't know that's
right.
You do that when you do a larger upgrade. I think not just by itself.
Right. No, it would be a part of the whole expansion over one deal. But yeah, I think you'd see a second tier. I know that when it came out, everybody said that it would be designated as a easily expandable stadium.
Right.
Certainly easier than a dome, huh?
Yeah. That would be really just a kick in the knackers to have a dome and want to expand your stadium. I bet that would make people frustrated and stop going to games. And then after you made fun of your rival for only selling out games against you, then eventually you would only end up being able to sell against your rival while they sold out games, not against you. And then they would beat you in the national title game by like
45,
a billion,
21.
and then you'd be sad. And it would just be unfortunate, which is why I personally try to avoid stuff like that, because the worm always turns and I don't need that run up my ass. And this was a tasty Crown and Coke.
Apparently, well, it's tasty, but it has like an effect on you that either that drink is having an effect on you, like burping wise.
Form, I think.
No, I was burping from this little fire right here.
That I didn't know if it was just you just don't function well without chocolate milk. If that's just like
I will say
chocolate milk lately.
Chocolate milk, it does have me on my on top of my A game. That is a big deal.
Yep. Well, we'll see it next time, maybe.
That's why I need you guys here to keep me together. Oh, we will fill your stadium for you. Big words from a man who didn't he promise 200 plus rushing yards in the semifinal?
Something like that. Oh, but the field was an ice skating rink. Yeah. We played on a different side of the field than they did.
Well, you know how they're soft in Montana.
Ooh, shots fired.
Ruh-roh, Reggie.
I did hear. Speaking of that game, I was listening to Herder, his most recent podcast. He said he was probably going to be there for the SDSU Montana State
That'd be
game.
fantastic. We'll get him to the
Probably
tailgate.
swing by our tailgate.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that is by far our favorite game we were most looking forward to in the out of conference. Agreed?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't want to downplay what we did in Minneapolis, but I'm more excited for the Montana State game. Let's just put it that way.
We're saving talking that stuff too much, right? What do you want to pull that schedule up that Dallas so kindly put together for us, and then expects us to somehow stick to a schedule?
I am itching to talk about most of the stuff that's on this schedule that Dallas put together, and so it's killing me to only talk about FBS implications. But I'm sticking to the schedule.
It is appropriate that a man who just came out with an app, the Goal Tracker app, which I highly recommend everybody checks out, gives a whirl. There's a free shout out for our boy Dallas. Putting that, it is Goal Tracker, right? Is that the name of it? But it is appropriate.
Goal System.
Goal System.
I was like, I think it's Goal System.
Goal System app. Goal System app. It is appropriate that he puts it up, puts together a schedule to have a goal of keeping us on track, which is difficult. Obviously, it's difficult to even get me to read things right.
Yeah, that was goal number 1 for me. Stay on track. Don't talk about the FCS overview, the MVFC breakdown, the defensive offensive previews, and game week all in this one podcast because I wanted to.
Because Lord knows we won't be able to fill up an hour otherwise.
Because we want to, not because you told us to, Dallas.
But he said it's close enough. Goal System.
Go. No, but seriously, people should check it out. It's awesome. It is really cool. Oh, you will. Jesus, he is a scary man. And he's got access to hockey sticks, which is a little bit dangerous.
So
don't make him crash that plane on my house.
Sticking to the schedule, FBS implications. The one thing that is interesting with all these FBS moves and these super conferences that are happening is the talk of the FBS to FCS games potentially not happening near as often, and especially with those Power 5 conferences. And so it'll be interesting to see what the implications of that are. And on top of that, I will say that it's such a shame that this team that we have this year, that, we'll get into how awesome this team's going to be in later podcasts, but we all know it's going to be awesome. It's a shame that we're not going to see this team whoop up on an FBS team, because there aren't that many FBS teams that I would not favor us against.
That is something that is going to have effect going forward. We don't get the guaranteed money. So unless we're doing home and homes and bringing in ticket revenue with like the Montana State game, I think that's what we're going to end up having to do to drive, the budgets a little bit that way. Well, that's gonna have an effect.
If you look at our early season draw that we bring in every year, just due to the Dairy Drive and
Beef Bowl,
it doesn't really matter too much who you play. Yeah, and the Cereal Bowl. Doesn't matter a huge amount who you play. You're going to have a good draw. Will we have more people from Montana State? Absolutely. Do I agree that you'll need more home and homes with Montana States? Sure. But I don't necessarily think it's to balance the budget as much as it is just for a quality of schedule aspect, because we've had years without them before, right?
Ron.
Iowa didn't call to play us again. No,
I don't think
the word on the street. Nebraska's been literally calling our games to other colleges to not play us. So Cornhuskers, more. I'm not going to finish that. Had be rude.
All right. Well, we're pushing up on an hour here. Do we have any other closing thoughts?
I like alcohol.
Beer is good. Beer is good and stuff. No, I don't think I have anything else. Hopefully me personally didn't ramble too much and people were able to follow the tangled web we wove.
Check out the article that Brendan wrote. Excuse me. There's 4-part
Yeah.
series. I threw it in
If you wanna
the
check
chat
it
for
out.
everybody to click on. So you don't have that. Otherwise, just go to the Jack's Illustrated blogs, and it's right there for you on our webpage.
Does put together more solid numbers, puts in the travel numbers as to why certain things make sense and certain things don't. It's just a bunch of stuff that I kind of knew, but I wanted to get all in one place. But beyond that, we also want to thank Culver's in Brookings and Watertown for sponsoring us. My wife has, we just went and picked up some Culver's the other night with some of the cheese sauce. If you are ordering a butter burger, which you should because they're fantastic, but if you order a butter burger, there's 2 things you need to get. You need to get the cheese sauce for the fries, and you need to get custard for afterwards. So Culver's at Brookings, Watertown, and then make sure you get your Scoopies tokens.
Also,
and I still haven't received my Scoopy tokens, which makes me a little bit sad.
Also, to Brendan's wife, she said it was like 6 weeks. No, it's only 5 weeks. It's 5 weeks and 5 days.
I just kept putting it up there because I don't want to be the only person that has to retract what he says all the time.
I didn't say that. What do you mean he says? That's my wife.
No,
that wasn't me.
No. I didn't say that. I said I don't want to be the only person that always screws things up.
He says. Oh, I thought you were talking about. I say a lot of wrong things, so I thought that was a me thing.
Hey, Rabbit, good to have you, buddy.
Hey, the man, the myth, the legend himself.
Apparently, we got to take Dustin to a Culver's and get him some Scoopy tokens.
When he comes up, he will be here.
This
That's
year?
a profound statement.
This year?
When he comes up, he will be here.
It's a threat.
Is that happening this year?
I got a whole bed of the pickup truck with a steel top. He's not getting out, so he'll be here. When he's here, I will take him to Culver's in Brookings. Probably not Watertown because that would just be excessive driving in South Dakota.
Yeah. All right. I think that's it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's coming undone.
I just
quickly.
didn't see Jim Poppins, normal comments. So
He usually tells us to get the hell out.
Yeah.
He did say good show.
Guys...
Great to have us back.
Yeah.
That was a subtle version.
Yeah. He's
all right.
Nice.
Well, as always, go big, go blue, go Jacks.
Go Jacks.